The basics, advanced tips, and more on how to play Iron Man in Marvel Rivals. So the basics with Iron Man, his basic attack is Repulsor Blast, where he fires his nano pulse cannons towards the enemy, and these have an explosion around them. His secondary attack is Unibeam, which does a high amount of single target damage to one enemy. Now both of these abilities use from the same ammo source, as you can see in the bottom left. Next, Hyper Velocity, which is Iron Man's movement ability, which just lets him fly. Hyper Velocity also leads into his next basic ability, which is Micro Missile Barrage. So when you're in Hyper Velocity, it will fire out a barrage of missiles to the target.
Rocket barrage, better run.
Iron Man's last basic ability, Armor Overdrive, enhances Repulsor Blast, Unibeam, and he can launch his missiles without being in Hyper Velocity. And last off, you have Invincible Pulse Cannon, which fires a massive shot with a massive explosion, which does up to 1,000 damage. Now, Iron Man's team-up ability is with the Hulk / Bruce Banner. Now, instead of Armor Overdrive, Iron Man has Gamma Overdrive, which enhances his abilities even further.
Glad I could help.
Okay, so for Iron Man's advanced tips, his kit is probably one of the most simplest in the game, but there's a lot of small things that you do need to know. And this all comes down to the 3 different states that Iron Man can be in. So first things first, with Repulsor Blast, you may notice that on the 3rd attack, Iron Man puts both hands up and fires a shot. Now in fact, this is a different type of attack compared to the first 2 shots. The first 2 shots deal 55 base damage and then an additional 35 blast damage, with the projectile speed being at 60 meters per second and the area of the blast being 3 meters. Now, on that 3rd attack, it actually does 65 damage with a bonus of 40 in the blast radius. So instead of 90 damage all up, it actually does 105 damage all up. As well as the projectile speed goes at 80 meters per second. Essentially, treat every 3rd attack as the stronger attack for Iron Man. And yes, there is damage on the attack hitting as well as the explosion damage. So one main tip is to aim actually for the targets, because that's really going to be the difference in your damage. And this is why if you have an Iron Man which isn't doing damage, he really isn't hitting his targets. At this max range, we can compare the travel time of that 3rd shot. So if I fire 1, 2, and then the 3rd one, you can see it catches up and hits the 2nd shot at the exact same time at this max distance. So just keep that in mind when you're aiming on a moving target, that this 3rd shot should be a little bit faster and easier to hit enemies with. Now onto the Repulsor Blast with Armor Overdrive. Armor Overdrive will buff that projectile speed up to the speed of the 3rd shot, as well as the blast radius going up to 5 meters from the base 3 meters. So the Armor Overdrive replaces all Iron Man's normal shots to the 3rd shot essentially. The base damage of the projectile stays the same at 55, but now the explosion damage goes up to 55 in damage. So that's a little bit more than the 2-handed repulsor shot. So the actual impact damage is less than the 2-handed shot, but the explosion damage on the Armor Overdrive state is better. And if you hit someone with a direct impact, that's going to deal 110 damage. So you do want to be aiming for the enemy heroes as best as you can. And then we get into the Gamma Overdrive state. So this is when you are teaming up with the Hulk on your team. The Gamma Overdrive, pretty much the exact same as the Armor Overdrive, just with an additional damage of 5 on the direct impact as well as the explosion. So additionally, another 10 damage per shot, so you can deal up to 120 damage if you get a direct impact on a hero. There's some other things to mention with Repulsor Blast. It does use infinite ammo. A good time to use your Armor Overdrive is when you're running low or about to run out of ammo on Iron Man's basic attacks. Then if you activate Armor Overdrive, then you have infinite ammo. There's no downtime in between your shots. Onto Unibeam. This is Iron Man's single target ability. You want to be using this in your 1v1 situations. As well, 120 damage per second. Now, you really want to be using this ability when Armor Overdrive is activated because it bumps the damage up from 120 damage per second up to 180 damage per second. So a big plus 60 in your damage. The beam length stays the exact same, but it does give you that huge kick in damage. Now for the Gamma Overdrive, it bumps it up to 220 damage per second. So comparing that to the base Unibeam, that's an extra 100 damage. So this thing can absolutely shred tanks and enemies in no time at all, and probably is one of the strongest single target abilities in the game. Now for Hyper Velocity, which is Iron Man's movement ability, the only difference with the Armor Overdrive for Hyper Velocity is that there's no limit on how far or how long you can fly for, but then you are wasting the downtime of using your Armor Overdrive for the extra damage. But keep that in mind if you are in a pickle and you need to fly a long distance, make sure to use your Armor Overdrive and you can just keep flying. Now to Micro Missile Barrage, this one's very interesting and takes a while to get used to. When you're using Hyper Velocity, it fires the missiles in these two parallel lines going straight ahead. By looking up, down, it really doesn't change the angle of these missiles. They'll pretty much stay the same direction and angle. So just practice around with this and get used to it because you can't really do much. But once again, this is pretty impacted by the difference of using Armor Overdrive. So the base projectile speed is 15 meters per second, and there's 16 missiles which deal 20 damage each with a explosion radius of 2 meters. The missile speed goes from 15 meters per second up to 60 meters per second. So the missiles are going to be coming at the enemies a lot faster, as well as firing an additional 2 missiles. But on the counter to that, the missiles will deal 5 less damage each. So only 15 instead of 20. But then the cooldown is reduced from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. And the main one is the missiles just fire at random compared to in these two parallel lines. The missile will just be a complete volley on the target area that you are aiming at. So I do recommend trying to get used to the difference in the missiles between Armor Overdrive state and normal in Hyper Velocity. You really just want to be using it as often as you can just for that extra little bit of damage. Oof. Now that is a lot of information to take in, so now just for some general tips, now with Hyper Velocity, one thing I do recommend is going into settings with Iron Man, clicking on the hero and then going to hold to perform Hyper Velocity, as well as Overdrive Hyper Velocity hold down. This way you're holding down the ability and then releasing will actually stop your flight. I find this to be better and much more easy to control rather than tap on, tap off. Then you can really do these short flights just to get your missile barrage off while your hyperdrive is on cooldown. So once you're attacking, just quickly dash in, get your rockets off, and continue shooting. So as you can see, the missiles follow your cursor now, so you can actually change where they're going to. Now the missiles do go to your cursor, but I do find it better if you just aim slightly underneath your enemy. It just seems a lot more missiles do hit the ground around them if you're aiming at the feet of your enemy. You're never going to be really relying on the missiles, you just want to be using this in between your attacks. Hopefully help you out. Now for aiming at small characters, once you've got a general lock on the enemy, try and use your mobility rather than your aiming to try and track or stay on your opponent. As if you have a higher sensitivity, you will probably fling off the enemy pretty easily. So for example, compare this, just me tracking him with my movement, comparing that to me tracking him with a mouse. You can see my mouse movement is very jittery compared to the smoothness of flight. So keep that in mind when you're using your Unibeam to stay on target. You want to be using a mix of both, but keeping track of the enemy with your movement keys is the best, or is just a helpful way to aim. Now when you are using Unibeam, you don't want to be standing still like this, because that makes you an easy target for any Hawkeye or Black Widow. You want to be going up, down, left, right, and just moving around as much as you can. So try and get used to always be moving in midair as Iron Man. Otherwise, you're just going to get sniped out of the air. So you want to be just firing blasts from an advantage point or high ground where your body is mostly in cover, or somewhere where you can dip behind cover quickly and then come out, get more shots on. Especially when you are activating armor overdrive, you are pretty useless for a good 3 seconds or so. So just make sure that you are activating that in cover and coming out of the cover when it's activated. Now onto tips for Invincible Pulse Cannon. The best way to get used to this ability is just practice. Now the projectile does take a long time to reach the target, as well as Iron Man screams out maximum pulse. So this alerts every enemy in the area and they should just know to run at that point. Or if there's someone like a Doctor Strange or a Cap, they should be raising their shield and trying to aim at you as fast as they can. So one of the ways to avoid detect, for example, was a battle with my teammates here, the enemies over there. You want to try and sneak around to an enemy flanking position so no one is looking at you, they don't know where you are, and this is the best time to get the ultimate off. Iron Man flanking doesn't have to be just with the ultimate. Using gamma power and coming up behind the enemy and getting shots off, or a Unibeam, can be very effective, as we can see in some of the gameplay clips coming up right now. Now we really can't learn much without going to some gameplay. So straight into it, we can see Luna's popping off with a fun ultimate, making us do nothing. So I fly up to a flanking position and pop the ultimate, and we get a triple. Go for the Luna, kill her off, and finish off the Thor, getting the quad and the ace for the team. Up next is a bit of a funny one. We have pushed the enemy back to their spawn in this domination. Do you reckon they can see me if I hover here? Pretty simple question to ask my teammates. And I just wait for the enemies to push up, and we give them the blicky. So they definitely didn't see me. So just one thing to take in mind, just be a sneaky little boy with your Iron Man. Yeah, it turns out they didn't see me. Now we do hear the strange portal. Instead of taking them front on, I do flank around, come up from behind, and just burst the shit out of all of them with Thor once again. Oh, that was fucking huge. So instead of taking the enemy front on and being the main target, diving out of the situation and coming back from a different angle. Onto the next clip, just staying up as high as we can away from the Venom so we don't get autoed by him. And just focusing him down, as we are just a really good tank killer with the Gamma Overdrive active. We do hear Punisher ult, so I am just trying to stay out of his line of sight. And we do flank around because no one was able to see me. And maximum pulse, we do pick up a double, which is enough for us to push the cart to victory. Onto this next one. Just staying up, being a menace. As soon as I start taking fire, getting on low health, it is good to know the health pots around the map so you can fly around and just pick them up, because you aren't going to be getting as healed as much as a flying character by your teammates, just because you're going to be up in the air hiding in these nooks and crannies compared to being in the direct line of sight of your healers, so just keep that in mind. Popping the Gamma Overdrive and using that Unibeam. We do change to the Repulsor Blast to finish off Rocket, just because he is a little rascal. And there's the next one, coming up once again from behind and just popping the Invincible Pulse Cannon, getting that double and helping out the team. In this next one, this clip was actually nuts for me. They were so bunched up, and this is a perfect time to use your armor overdrive to get the enhanced blast radius. Ulti. We do pick up the quad from there and chase Scarlet Witch out of the fight. But yeah, that was just crazy.
Bro.
In this next one, we are going up against a Hawkeye, so we take a shot from him, so we do fly out, but then Scarlet Witch comes in from a flank to get the ulti. Nope. We take her out, and we have our ultimate, so we're just flanking around to get a better position, and maximum pulse, pick up the double, taking up a Duelist and Strategist. Int a little bit there, diving straight into Doctor Strange's head.
I'm gonna die!
So Iron Man is one of the heroes that you do want to learn the maps, just to find the flanking routes like this. How does this go? Just come up behind two of the Duelists, take them out with one shot, and that's all the enemy damage. Our Scarlet Witch picks up another two. Surprise! Midnight must have got the res from Rocket, but we take him out with the enhanced Unibeam. Onto this next one, keeping our height, flying in just to get the rockets off, just for that little bit more damage, and then flying back up and away. Using the Gamma Overdrive, I find that we aren't doing that much damage, so I've turned my attention to Rocket to take out the enemy heals, as well as Storm hasn't noticed me at all, so good time to take her out with the Unibeam, and then the rest of the team fall from there. So just unit prioritization. You can get around the front lines of enemies with this hero. Just a tip of using the healing ping, because you will need to use it. Being high in the sky, your teammates will not see you.
Need some repairs. Fast.
Once again, just targeting the enemies that my teammates can't really get to. Bit of a ulti, only taking out one, but that one is enough for us to keep pushing. Now for team comp wise, Iron Man is really good with the extra damage from Hulk. You do not need it, but it is recommended to have a Hulk on your team for this extra damage. But if the enemies are clumping up a lot, Iron Man is a really good pick. In this one here, you may have seen it in a short, but we maximum pulse, pick up a quad with it, and then we have a Storm on our backline. I just fly up and we get the pentakill from that. Now, we'll see it again, but a good time to use your ulti is when the enemy actually use a good ultimate. So if your teammates get hit with a Groot ult or a Doctor Strange ult, know that the enemy team are going to push up into that situation without thinking of any negatives. They're going to be going off their teammates. Keep that in mind when using your ultimate. That's a good time to use it to an enemy using their ultimate. So here's just another clip of all of the enemies being bunched. Do have a little bit of an Iron Man off. So once again, Doctor Strange gets his ulti off and I retaliate with mine, taking out two of their own. Just trying to fly away from this idiot punching me in the back of the head. And we just win the fight from there. So I've flanked around in this clip behind the enemy Iron Man and given him the blicky in the back. And from there we just push the enemy back a little bit too far, so we're just coming back and just keeping the enemy at bay. Now the explosions don't do that much damage, but it is enough to push the enemy away and just think that they're taking damage and they are needing to retreat. Now getting an ultimate here just from cover. Once again, Groot uses his ultimate, so I retaliate with mine. Pick up a double and we can take the fight from there.
Nice.
Do take out Magneto, get the quad, do die in the meantime. But yeah.
Quad.
Iron Man has to be one of my favorite duelists in the game, and I hope you guys have learned something from this video. Now, if there is something I've missed with Iron Man, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section below for myself, because I do read and respond to pretty much every single comment. As well, other people can read the comments and see tips that I've missed. I'm slowly going through the whole roster making guides, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are a small channel and every single subscriber goes a long way, and that's pretty much it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
A MVP.